death penalty has been debated all over our country, and there are so many different arguments on why or why not we should have the death penalty. There are many pros and cons to the death penalty. A few pros to the death penalty are it stops criminals from committing serious crimes and is cost effective. A few cons to the death penalty are the justice system is bound to make a mistake sooner or later, and it continues the cycle of violence. The death penalty also has an impact on crime rates in states with and without the death penalty. There are many sides to this argument I will tell you about today. I'm going to start by telling you about some pros to the death penalty. Sometimes the death penalty is the only fitting punishment. The death penalty has been around since 1700 BC and has been used in many different cultures. The way people are executed for their crimes has changed drastically from how people used to be executed. I found an article that talks about the current situation with the death penalty in California. California is known for being a largely democratic state, which means they should be against the death penalty. However, the people of California have consistently voted down measures to ban the death penalty. California makes up for a large percent of people on death row, and abolishing the death penalty would reduce the population of inmates on death row by 26%. The public support for the death penalty is decreasing, but it still holds the vast majority of 60% of the United States population for capital punishment for serious crimes such as murder. People need to have a more serious sentence than just life in prison. Now that I've discussed some pros to the death penalty, let's talk about some of the significant flaws and failures of the death penalty. Being sentenced to death in America is only for the worst of the worst crimes. But what if that person didn't commit the crime? Death sentencing and executions in the United States have steadily been declining in recent years. Despite these trends, death sentences continue to be imposed in a handful of states. Well, flaws and failures of this system are more apparent than ever. I found an article that gives a unique perspective of someone who is wrongly convicted who is on death row. He had multiple reasons that proved he could not have committed the crime. However, his court-appointed lawyers failed to call a key witness to testify about his whereabouts and failed to call a doctor to testify about his injury that made it impossible for him to commit the crime. This is a prime example of our flawed system being the reason an innocent man was sentenced to death. The National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty says there are 6 main flaws and failures to the death penalty. These flaws and failures related to the death penalty are racial bias, innocence, cost, victims and their families, and even harm to the people that are sentencing the inmates to death. The cost of executing someone is outrageous. The median cost of the federal death penalty case is around $620,000. Another flaw to the death penalty is the chain of violence it contributes to. One aspect I never even thought of until researching for this speech is the impact that it has on prison employees that are doing the executions. Many of these employees involved in executions have suffered from PTSD-like symptoms, such as flashbacks, nightmares, and other types of distress. Next, I will talk about the impact the death penalty has on our country. I found an article that talks about the effect that the punishment has on the people who are about to commit a serious crime. A study was conducted that states for every inmate put to death, 3 to 8 murders are prevented. A lot of criminals committing these sorts of crimes aren't scared of prison time and require a much more serious sentence, such as death. Today I've told you information on the death penalty, and I've hoped that helped you decide whether you are for or against it. There are so many factors that go into deciding whether or not the death penalty should be allowed. There are very strong points from both perspectives. I hope this speech helped you decide what side of the debate you are on.